There is a kind of loneliness that cannot be seen. It has nothing to do with being physically alone in a room. It has to do with being surrounded by people and still feeling like no one truly understands you. No one sees what you are carrying inside. No one perceives the emotional weight you are silently holding. Emotional loneliness does not always arrive suddenly. Sometimes it settles in gradually. It begins when you share something important and do not receive the response you expected. When you speak about your exhaustion and are told you are exaggerating. When you express your doubts and are given quick advice instead of real listening. When you need support and find indifference. And then something inside you begins to close. Not because you want to isolate yourself, but because you learn that opening up does not always bring relief. Sometimes it brings more discomfort, more misunderstanding, more of that feeling of being out of place. There is a particularly difficult moment in this process when you expected someone to be there, and they were not. It might be a partner, a friend, a family member. It might be someone you always supported. And when the situation reverses, when you are the one who needs support, you discover you are alone. That moment hurts more than the difficulty itself, because you are not only facing the external problem, you are also facing the rupture of an expectation. The expectation that you would not have to carry everything on your own. Many people try to minimize this wound by telling themselves they should be stronger, that they should not depend on anyone, that support is not necessary. But the truth is that human beings are designed to connect, to share burdens, to feel accompanied. Not wanting support does not make you stronger. It makes you disconnected. The problem is not wanting company. The problem is when that company does not appear, and then a silent internal dialogue begins. Maybe I am too much. Maybe I am asking for too much. Maybe I am not that important to them. These phrases are not always spoken out loud, but they are felt. Emotional loneliness has a very particular component. It is not always visible to others. You can continue working. You can continue fulfilling responsibilities. You can continue smiling in superficial conversations. From the outside, everything looks normal. But inside, there is a constant feeling of holding yourself up alone. This forced self-sufficiency may look like strength, but often it is born from exhaustion. From the exhaustion of waiting, of explaining, of feeling like what you are going through finds no echo in anyone. Some people, after repeated disappointments, decide not to need anyone. They become extremely independent. They learn not to ask for help. They learn to solve everything on their own. They learn not to show vulnerability. And from the outside, that seems admirable. But inside, there is often a wound that has not been attended to. The wound of not feeling supported when you needed it most. This kind of loneliness can generate two very different reactions. Some people become dependent, desperately seeking validation and support everywhere. Others become closed off, self-sufficient to the point of not allowing anyone close. Both reactions have the same root, the fear of feeling alone again. It is important to understand something here. Feeling emotional loneliness does not mean you are weak. It means you have legitimate emotional needs. It means you desire real connection, and that is not a flaw. It is human. The problem appears when you interpret that loneliness as proof that something is wrong with you, because then the external wound becomes an internal wound. You begin to think that maybe you do not deserve support. that maybe you are not important enough for someone to be there when you need them. And that belief begins to affect your self-esteem, your confidence, your way of relating. Moving forward when no one is by your side begins here. It does not begin with discipline. It does not begin with motivational phrases. It begins by acknowledging this silent wound. Acknowledging that it hurt. Acknowledging that you expected something that did not come. Acknowledging that you felt alone, even when surrounded by people. Accepting this experience does not make you a victim. It makes you aware. And awareness is the first step to transforming loneliness into healthy autonomy, not defensive isolation. Because there is a difference between being alone by choice and being alone by resignation. And at this point, we are not talking about strength yet. We are talking about honesty. The honesty of admitting that it hurts not to have anyone by your side. From there, the path begins to change. There is a very specific moment in the process of growing alone. It is not always dramatic. It is not always a big scene. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it happens while you are washing dishes, walking home, or staring at the ceiling before sleep. It is the instant when an idea appears without decoration. No one is coming, not as a tragedy, not as a sentence, but as a truth. For a long time, many people live waiting for something external to change their situation. For someone to arrive with the right words. For someone to understand exactly what they feel without needing explanation. For someone to give them the strength they lack. For someone to push them when they have no energy. And there is nothing wrong with wanting support. The problem begins when waiting turns into immobility. When you do not make decisions because no one backs me. When you do not move forward because no one believes in me. When you do not change because, if I had more support, things would be different. That waiting can last years. Sometimes it is disguised as hope, other times as resignation. But underneath is a powerful belief, I can't do this alone. And that belief settles silently. Imagine someone, let's call her Laura, who has wanted to change jobs for months. She feels stuck, undervalued, emotionally drained. She talks to friends, family, her partner. She waits for someone to say, "Do it, I support you." But the responses are ambiguous. Think carefully. It's not a good time. What if it goes wrong? Laura interprets those doubts as lack of support, and she decides to wait. She waits for the perfect moment. She waits for enthusiasm from others. She waits to feel accompanied in the decision. Months pass. Nothing changes. One day, after another exhausting workday, she sits in her car before going home. She does not cry. She does not scream. She just sits there. And in that uncomfortable silence, a sentence appears. If I keep waiting for someone to push me, I will never move. It is not heroic. It is honest. That is the breaking point. Not when everything improves. Not when magical support arrives. But when you understand that your progress cannot depend exclusively on external validation. Accepting that no one will come to save you may hurt at first, because it breaks a very deep fantasy, the idea that someone will always carry you when you cannot. But there is also something profoundly liberating in this realization. When you accept that no one will fix your life for you, you stop postponing responsibility. Emotional responsibility does not mean everything that happens to you is your fault. It means what you do with what happens is in your hands. It is an internal shift. You move from asking, "Why does no one help me?" to asking, What can I do, even if no one applauds? That shift transforms your energy. While you are waiting, you are passive. When you decide to act, even in small ways, you regain agency. Support is healthy when it complements you, not when it replaces you. If your drive depends completely on others' encouragement, your stability will always be fragile. Accepting that no one is coming does not mean no one loves you. It means your process is yours. And here something important appears. When you stop waiting for rescue, you begin to listen to yourself more. You begin to discover your own resources. You begin to make decisions based on coherence, not approval. Autonomy is not coldness. It is capacity. It is the capacity to hold yourself when the environment does not. It is waking up and saying, maybe no one is coming, but I am still moving. Not with explosive motivation, but with quiet determination. And that determination is more stable than any momentary impulse, continuing seamlessly. Sometimes we believe we are not moving forward because we lack support. But when we stop waiting for rescue and accept that the movement depends on us, something deeper appears. Fear, not always dramatic, often subtle. A quiet tension, a whisper. What if it doesn't work? The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, even the fear of success. Growth feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. So the mind protects you by keeping you still. But courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement despite it. Acting with fear, speaking with fear, deciding with fear. Each small action teaches your nervous system that growth is not destruction. And slowly, fear loses intensity. After loneliness, responsibility, and fear, there comes a quieter stage. The silent construction of your inner stability. Strength is not built in a dramatic day. It is built through repetition, small actions, keeping promises to yourself, doing what you said you would do, even in small amounts. Confidence is built through behavior. Each small action sends a message. I can rely on myself. And that message builds a base, not hardness, not emotional coldness, but consistency, and consistency becomes freedom. After crossing loneliness, the breaking point, fear, and inner construction, you arrive somewhere different. Not euphoria, not invincibility, freedom, not the defensive, I don't need anyone, but the mature freedom of knowing you can be alone without feeling abandoned. Being alone is not the same as feeling alone. When you can hold yourself, loneliness becomes space. Space to listen. Space to decide. Space to grow. And from that space, you can love without fear. Because you are not with someone to avoid loneliness. You are with someone to share life. And if no one walks beside you for a while, you do not stop. You continue. Not from anger. Not from pride, but from coherence. Moving forward alone does not mean rejecting others. It means not rejecting yourself. And when you do not abandon yourself, even in the quietest moments, you discover something no one can take from you. Your ability to carry your own path. That is freedom. If this story resonated with you, if at any moment you felt it touched something inside you, I would love to read you in the comments. Tell me if you learned something today. And if you want to keep receiving these gentle reminders that can support you in your daily life, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here, for taking this moment of calm. I'll see you in the next video.